Generational trauma isn't just about past events. It's the subtle, often unseen influence of our ancestors' experience that can shape our emotional responses today. In this episode, we're exploring how trauma is inherited, how it affects our mental health, and how these invisible scars influence our lives every day. We'll dive into stories of hardship, resilience, and healing, and examine both personal anecdotes and expert insights to understand this complex phenomenon. Think for a moment. When you encounter moments of unexplained anxiety or a reoccurring sense of loss, could it be that these feelings are echoes from your family's past? Today, we invite you to reflect on your own emotional history. Perhaps ask yourself, what stories might my family be silently carrying? Whether you've noticed subtle patterns in your own life or are completely new to the idea, this episode is a space for exploration and shared understanding. Today, we'll navigate the landscape of generational trauma together. We'll break down the concept, hear some of the research from experts who study the intergenerational transmission of pain, and share personal stories that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. So settle in, open your heart, and join us on a journey to uncover how our past continues to shape our present, and how by understanding them, we might find the seeds for healing and growth. Generational trauma refers to the transmission of the effects of trauma from one generation to the next. It's not about one devastating event, it's how the emotional, psychological, and even biological impacts of past hardships, whether from wars, abuse, or systemic oppression, can ripple through families and communities over time. Researchers like Mariah Yellowhorse Braveheart first introduced this idea while working with Native American communities, showing that the pain of colonization, forced assimilation, and family separations can continue to affect descendants today. There are several ways that trauma can be passed down. First, there's the learned behavior. Children often absorb the emotional responses and coping mechanisms of their caregivers. If a parent struggles to deal with deep-seated grief or anxiety, these patterns can inadvertently shape the child's own emotional landscape. Additionally, recent research into epigenetics suggests that severe stress and trauma may leave chemical marks on our DNA, changes that can be inherited by our children and even grandchildren. For instance, studies have shown that the impact of trauma can alter gene expression, potentially predisposing subsequent generations to anxiety, depression, and even accelerated cellular aging. Beyond the individual, generational trauma can be seen as a collective narrative, a set of shared experiences that defines a community's identity. This is evident in groups like Native American communities, whose history with boarding schools and forced assimilation has left a legacy of intergenerational pain, but also a fierce determination to reclaim cultural identity. Similarly, other communities around the world carry forward the emotional scars of historical injustice. By understanding these shared experiences, we not only validate our own internal struggles, but also open the path towards collective healing. Now consider this. Have you ever felt an inexplicable heaviness during moments of stress, as if your heart were burdened by something beyond your own life? It might be that, unknowingly, you're carrying the echoes of past generations, stories of loss, survival, and resilience that were never fully healed. Generational trauma challenges us to ask, what patterns might we be inheriting? And more importantly, what can we do to break these cycles? In today's episode, we're not only exploring the science behind this phenomena, from learned behaviors and epigenetic changes, but also share real-life stories and how individuals and communities are confronting and healing these wounds. Whether you see these patterns in your own life or in the broader narrative of your family history, understanding generational trauma is a crucial step towards reclaiming your power and starting a process of healing. There is pain in everyone's past. And although that is not attempted to be passed down, it inadvertently is. As we pass through phases in life, we can more easily identify where the pain from past experiences influences us. I remember hearing another family story of how they baked a ham that is a really good representation of this. Stick with me, I promise there is a point. When a man married his wife, the first time she baked a ham, she cut it in half to do so. He asked her why she did it that way, and her response was, "I don't know. My mother always did it this way." So the next time that they were at his in-laws, he asked her mother, and she had the same response. "My mother always did it that way." Now the wife was intrigued herself, so she called her grandmother. The grandmother explained that as she was growing up, her mother had always had to cut the ham in half because the whole ham would not fit in the wood-burning stove. And since that was the way that she learned to bake a ham, it just continued to be a habit for her. Even though things had progressed, and stoves are exceptionally way more adept to handle the size of a ham, even generations later, the hams were still being handled in the exact same manner. It may seem like a trivial example, but when you really think about it, there are so many more systemic things that this factors into in family dynamics. The way discipline is handled, the expectation of how children are supposed to act in public and perform in school, what you are supposed to do and wear on Sunday, even down to how you handle overstimulation as a parent. So many things are influenced from past generations, and although the why behind it has slowly faded out, the expectations remain. A lot of it, as I mentioned earlier, isn't curated and heavily thought out. Due to the fact that no one hands you a handbook on how to be a parent the first day your child enters the world, you are just as much a baby parent as that newborn infant is a baby person. We fall back on what we know, and in some instances, the lessons on what not to do. But no one person has ever done it completely right. I think a large factor in changing how this continues to pass down is not only learning to accept and confront our personal downfalls as parents, but also learning that it is acceptable and fully warranted to apologize to our children for the mistakes that we make as parents. By no means do I mean this in the manner of equalizing parent and child in the family dynamic, but by addressing that a mistake was made in the relationship, we can foster a closer relationship with our children in the future, as well as working to end passing down inherited negative communicative traits. It's definitely a conversation worth having and an ideology worth giving thought. So many of us carry the weight of childhood trauma. And if there is any way that we can help mitigate that for further generations, it is something worth putting the time and energy in to preserve not only the mental health of our children, but the potential of maintaining relationships with them as they pass on into adulthood themselves. Generational trauma doesn't just linger as a historical concept. It seeps into our minds and bodies. When the pain of past generations isn't acknowledged, it can manifest as chronic anxiety, deep-seated depression, or even post-traumatic stress. Studies have shown that severe trauma can lead to epigenetic marks on our DNA, altering gene expression in ways that predisposes future generations to heightened stress responses and mood disorders. In fact, research analyzing Syrian families found induced changes in DNA methylation were evident in mothers, their children, and even grandchildren. Imagine carrying an emotional backpack inherited from your ancestors, a weight that intensifies every new challenge you face. For many, this means that everyday stressors can trigger disproportionate emotional responses. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by a seemingly minor setback, you might be experiencing a cumulative effect of inherited pain. The trigger cascade occurs when pre-existing generational wounds amplify the impact of new traumas, making it harder to recover or even recognize that the present moment is different from the past. These deep-seated effects can also influence our relationships and behavior. People burdened with generational trauma might find themselves struggling with trust issues, experiencing difficulty in forming secure attachments, or even engaging in self-destructive behaviors as a way to cope with unresolved pain. Over time, these patterns can not only affect individual mental health, but can also perpetuate cycles of abuse and emotional dysregulation within families and communities. This can be extremely evident when trying to build trust within a relationship with someone new. We inherently see the standards in which we were held to as how the world would perceive us. Even though each person we encounter holds their own version of who you are in their own mind, we tend to judge ourselves in interactions with others based off the principles that we have inherited, regardless of if they are positive or negative. This is one of the reasons that people who endure abuse as a child will hold themselves to a higher standard than what they do other people. Even if they are not receiving that abuse from the person that they are interacting with, the standards they set for themselves in interactions may actually be those set in place by their abuser. Once again, it isn't a conscious thought pattern, but it is one that can end up passing down to the next generation by proxy, leading to heightened levels of anxiety and stress around social interactions in the generations to follow. It's important to note while addressing this that it is not by fault of anyone that experienced trauma that this ends up happening. Our brains work constantly to fight against perceived threats, and post-traumatic stress exists as a response to experienced threats. It is not at all a burden or weight for the person who experienced trauma to carry. It's more so something to be aware of in order to foster relationships where the past doesn't pour into and influence them, as it is unfair that the abuser maintains a grip on your life beyond the trauma that they caused you. Take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. Perhaps you've noticed reoccurring feelings of sadness or anxiety that seem out of proportion to your current life events. It might be worth asking, could these feelings be echoes of unhealed wounds passed down through generations? Whether it's through unexplained mood swings or challenges in forming healthy relationships, the imprint of generational trauma is real, and it's a call to both personal and collective healing. As we explore these emotional landscapes, remember that acknowledging the impact of generational trauma is the first step towards healing. By understanding how these inherited patterns shape our mental health, we can begin to break free from their hold and pave a way for a healthier, more resilient future for ourselves and for generations to come. The first step towards healing is acknowledgement, recognizing that the heavy feelings you sometimes experience may be echoes of unaddressed, inherited pain is both brave and essential. When we name our trauma, whether it's the unspoken grief of past family separations or the wounds inflicted by historical oppression, we reclaim the narrative. This isn't about blaming those who came before us, but rather understanding that by facing these hidden burdens, we can begin to heal. Therapy offers a powerful space to process and reframe these inherited wounds. Approaches like family therapy, individual counseling, or trauma-informed therapies such as eye movement desensitization and reprocessing help untangle the complex layers of generational pain. Experts emphasize that even when trauma is passed down through generations, targeted therapeutic interventions can help break the cycle. Organizations like NAMI encourage creating safe spaces for dialogue and healing, where sharing personal stories can lead to collective strength. In addition to professional help, self-care is a vital tool in the healing journey. Practices such as mindfulness meditation, journaling, or engaging in creative arts can offer daily moments of relief. For many, reconnecting with cultural traditions, whether that means participating in community rituals, cooking family recipes, or even exploring art that reflects their heritage, can ground them and foster resilience. These practices not only help manage stress, but can also reintroduce a sense of identity and pride that trauma may have obstructed. Healing isn't a solitary process. It often flourishes in context of community. Sharing stories with family members or support groups can illuminate patterns, validate experiences, and build a network of mutual understanding. Some communities are now organizing intergenerational storytelling sessions and cultural healing ceremonies, efforts that transform silent pain into voices of strength. When we listen to each other, we break down the walls of what has kept us isolated in our own suffering. Finally, it's important to remember that healing is not a destination but a lifelong journey. There will be setbacks along the way, but every small step, every conversation, every session, every moment of self-care is progress. By accepting that our pain may be a part of our legacy, we also open the door to rewriting that legacy. The goal is not to erase the past, but to transform its hold on our present, allowing us to build healthier futures for ourselves and our children. As we move forward in this episode, I invite you to consider which of these strategies resonates with you. whether it's exploring therapy, practicing mindfulness, or engaging in your community's traditions. Know that healing is both personal and collective. It's through these shared efforts that we can begin to transform the cycle of trauma into one of resilience and hope. As we reach the end of today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on our journey together. We began by uncovering the roots of generational trauma, how unspoken family pain, cultural wounds, and even biological imprints can shape who we are. We then explored the deep impact this legacy can have on our mental health, from amplified stress responses to challenges in our relationships. Finally, we discussed actionable strategies, from professional therapy and mindfulness to intergenerational dialogue and creative expression, that can help us transform inherited pain into a path for healing. Think back to the initial question we posed. What stories might your family be carrying? I hope today you've found some insights that encourage you to look within and begin, if you haven't already, a conversation about these hidden wounds. Remember, healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about understanding it so that we can reclaim our present and shape a healthier future. If today's discussion resonated with you, I invite you to take one small step forward. Perhaps start a journal, reach out to a trusted friend or professional, or even share your thoughts with your family. Your story matters, and by talking about it, you can help break silence that keeps trauma alive for way too long. And if you'd like to continue this conversation, please find me on TikTok under the name Another Broken Dad. Shoot us an email at brokenmedia1984@gmail.com, or drop us a comment. Your voice could be the spark that helps someone else begin their healing journey. Thanks for spending time with me today on Another Broken Podcast. I hope that our exploration of generational trauma has given you both understanding and hope. Remember, every small step that you take towards healing not only lightens your own burden, but it also sets a stage for healthier generations to come. Have a good one, guys.